The Grand Canyon kills confident people. Not the unprepared ones who forgot their water, the ones who laughed at the ranger telling them to turn around. The first group gets scared early and turns back. The second group feels fine right up until the moment feeling fine stops, meaning anything at all. It's July, the South Rim. Somewhere just past 9 in the morning, and the air at the trailhead already tastes like the inside of an oven. The inner canyon trails are registering 120 degrees Fahrenheit, not the ambient temperature, the trail surface. The National Park Service has a standing policy. Bright Angel closes to rim-to-river hikers by 10 a.m. on days like this. Not a suggestion, a closure. A uniformed ranger, name badge radio clipped to his chest, the kind of sun-weathered face that's delivered this speech 100 times, stands at the trailhead with a physical barrier and a red arrow warning sign that couldn't be more direct if it screamed. He has been at this post since the light came up. He has already turned 3 groups around this morning. The system is working, quietly, the way it almost always does. Then 4 women arrive. Neon activewear, matching sets, phones already out, filming the canyon like it's a backdrop. They're laughing before they even reach the sign. They have the easy confidence of people for whom the day has already been decided, and the canyon is simply the location where it will happen. The ranger delivers the closure speech, word for word, the way he always does. The trail is closed. The heat is dangerous. People have died doing exactly what they're planning. He does not raise his voice. He has learned that raising his voice makes people stop listening, and this speech is the only tool he has. One of them films him. Another says they've hiked before. They step around the barrier. And here's the part that stays with you. The ranger doesn't chase them. He watches them disappear down the trail. His expression isn't anger. It isn't surprise. It's something closer to resignation. The look of a man who knows exactly how this story ends and has no power left to change it. Keep that face in your mind. By the end of this, you're going to understand everything that was behind it. But before we follow them down that trail, we need to understand what 120 degrees actually does to a human body. Because these women clearly didn't. 1 liter. That's how much water your body burns through every single hour when you're exerting yourself in 120-degree heat. Not sipping, burning. Gone is sweat before it even feels like sweat, because in that kind of dry desert air, perspiration evaporates off your skin almost instantly. You don't feel wet, you feel fine, and that's exactly the problem. The desert hides the evidence of its own danger. In humid heat, you're drenched, miserable, constantly reminded that your body is struggling. In the canyon, you stay dry, you stay comfortable, and you keep walking, straight past the point where your body had been quietly begging you to stop. But the air temperature is almost beside the point. The exposed rock inside the inner canyon absorbs heat all day and radiates it back upward, regularly running 20 degrees hotter than the ambient air. So when the thermometer says 120, the trail beneath your feet is closer to 140. You're not hiking through heat, you're hiking inside it, surrounded on all sides. The canyon walls funneling superheated air upward like a chimney. There is no breeze that helps you. The air that moves is the air the rock has already cooked. The National Park Service has a phrase for what happens next. They call it the upside-down mountain. Every other hike on Earth puts the hardest part first, the climb. You earn the descent. The Grand Canyon reverses that. Going down is easy. Shaded walls, downhill momentum, the whole thing feels like a reward. It's only when you're already depleted, legs burning, water running low, that you face the brutal, fully exposed uphill return. By the time the trail asks the most of you, you have the least left to give. The mountain takes its payment at the exact moment you can least afford it. The National Park Service's own warning literature states it plainly. The Grand Canyon kills people every year who felt fine on the way down. So the ranger knew all of this. He knew the physics, the data, the pattern, which makes one question unavoidable. Why didn't they listen to him? The ranger's warning wasn't vague. That's the thing people assume, that these interactions are casual, a friendly heads up, easily dismissed. But NPS training is specific. Rangers are taught to deliver closure information in a calm, non-alarmist sequence. Trail status, temperature conditions, shade loss after the first mile, minimum rescue response time of 2 to 4 hours. He would have said all of it. Measured, clear, in uniform standing beside a physical barrier, with a sign that used the word dangerous in red. Every element of that interaction was engineered over decades of hard experience to land. And it still bounced off. They laughed anyway. And here's where discomfort starts to creep in, because their response wasn't stupidity. It was something more recognizable. Psychologists call it optimism bias, the near universal human tendency to believe that negative outcomes apply to other people, not to you. The sign was written for someone less experienced. The warning was for someone less prepared. They'd hiked before. They had matching gear. Their phones were charged. Every reason they had for feeling safe was real. None of it had anything to do with the actual variable that kills people in that canyon, which is heat, water, and time. NPS incident reports tell a story that's almost numbing in its consistency. The majority of heat rescues in the canyon involve people who were warned and continued anyway, not people who missed the sign, people who saw it, heard the ranger, and made a conscious decision that the statistics described someone else. The warning is rarely the missing piece. The warning is almost always present. What's missing is the ability to believe it points at you. Those 4 women in their neon sets had no framework for imagining themselves as the people the warning was written for. But the ranger had seen this before. And what he knew, what he couldn't say out loud, was already written in the incident logs. He turns back to his post. That's the job. Not pursuit, not intervention. NPS rangers cannot legally detain adults who choose to hike past a closure sign on public land. They can warn, they can document, and then they wait. It is one of the strangest cruelties of the work. The person most equipped to understand exactly what's about to happen is also the person least permitted to physically stop it. What most people don't realize is that the ranger standing at that trailhead isn't a security guard in a hat. He's a trained wilderness EMT, a search and rescue coordinator. He can read a patient's heat exhaustion symptoms at 20 yards, the subtle stumble, the flushed skin that stops sweating, the conversation that drifts a half second out of sync. He knows the canyon's rescue windows the way a surgeon knows a body, intimately, and with the full weight of what goes wrong when the timing slips. He's done this work in temperatures that ground civilian helicopters because at 120 degrees, the thin hot air gives rotors less to bite into and conditions become dangerous for the crew. Ground teams hike into the same heat as the victims they're recovering. There is no version of the rescue that isn't also a risk. So he picks up his radio. 4 females, bright activewear, single water bottles visible, no hats. Continuing past closure barrier at, and he checks his watch 9:17 a.m. He files the description. He starts the mental clock. Because that's what rangers describe in NPS interviews. The moment a group walks past isn't the moment they stop caring. It's the moment the clock starts. Everything he does for the rest of the morning, he does while one part of his mind stays down on that trail with 4 people who don't know he's still thinking about them. He goes back to watching the trailhead. He flags 2 more hikers. He gives the speech again. The 4 women, meanwhile, are having the time of their lives for about the first mile. The first stretch of Bright Angel is genuinely stunning. Shaded by towering canyon walls, the air runs a full 15 degrees cooler than the rim. The light filters down in golden columns. The path is wide, well-maintained, and dramatic in exactly the way the photos promised. If you designed a trap, you couldn't have built a better one. The first mile doesn't just fail to warn you, it actively reassures you. It hands you evidence with every shaded step that the man at the top was wrong. They're laughing, taking photos, pointing at formations. Every step downward feels like proof. The ranger was wrong, the signs were overcautious, and the canyon is magnificent. And it is magnificent. That's the part the warning can never compete with. Beauty feels like safety, and the canyon is overwhelmingly beautiful right up until it isn't. But somewhere around the 1.5 mile mark, the shade ends. There's no gradual transition. The canyon walls pull back, the trail opens onto fully exposed switchbacks, and suddenly there's nothing between them and a sun that has been baking that rock since dawn. The temperature on those exposed faces regularly hits 140 degrees, not air temperature, surface temperature. The heat comes from below as much as above. The reward portion of the hike is over. The bill has come due, and they're already 1.5 miles into a debt they didn't know they were accruing. It's approximately 11 a.m. now. They've been hiking for nearly 2 hours. Those single water bottles, the ones the ranger clocked at the trailhead, are empty or close to it. The neon activewear, perfect for photos, is trapping heat against their skin. Every decision that had been about the image was now quietly working against survival. And this is where the canyon's cruelest trick finishes its work. The early signals of heat illness, a headache, a flicker of dizziness, legs that feel heavier than they should, arrive looking exactly like ordinary tiredness from a long hike. There's no alarm, there's no obvious line you cross. The body is in real trouble well before the mind is willing to call it trouble, and by the time the symptoms are loud enough to be undeniable, the clear-headed thinking you'd need to plan an escape is the very thing the heat has started to take. The decision to turn back has to be made early, while you still feel fine, which is precisely when no one believes they need to make it. Here's what I want to ask you. Have you ever pushed past a warning because you were certain it didn't apply to you? What made you feel sure? Drop it in the comments because the psychology here is more universal than most of us want to admit. Back on the rim, the ranger's radio crackles. It's been 3 hours, no sign of them returning. He makes a call. 3 hours is the threshold. NPS protocol doesn't wait for certainty, it waits for the window to close. In extreme heat conditions with a flagged group and no return, rangers initiate a welfare check before hope runs out, not after. Waiting for proof that something is wrong in this environment is the same as waiting too long. This is not a small operation. Pulling a search team means reassigning rangers from other posts, coordinating with helicopter crews who are already monitoring rotor conditions in 120-degree thermals, and accepting a sobering reality. The people going in to find them are entering the same heat. NPS data shows that heat rescues in the Grand Canyon cost between $3,000 and $8,000 per incident. In severe cases, rescue personnel themselves require medical monitoring afterward. The canyon doesn't distinguish between the lost and the found. It applies the same physics to the rescuer that it applied to the person being rescued. The search team descends. And the ranger who filed that 9:17 a.m. description, the one who watched them step past the barrier, is among the first notified when the team radios back. He already knew, not because he's psychic, because he's read the incident logs. Because he knows what a single water bottle and no hat means at mile 1.5 when the shade runs out. He's seen this story in the data, in the debriefs, in the quiet paperwork that follows a bad day in the canyon. The details change, the arc almost never does. None of the 4 women made it back on their own. The canyon, at 120 degrees, collected exactly the toll it always does. Lives were lost, avoidably, completely avoidably. If you're someone who believes in understanding the full weight of decisions like this, not just the drama, but the why, subscribe. Not for me, but to be part of a community that takes these stories seriously enough to actually learn from them. And here's what I need you to sit with. That ranger went back to his post the next morning. Same trailhead, same sign. And the question that should be pulling at you now, why does the warning never work, is exactly where this story goes next. Researchers who study warning compliance, specifically in national park settings, have identified 4 conditions that make a warning almost impossible to act on. 4. And every single one of them was present at that trailhead on that morning. First, group dynamics. Studies of National Park Service closure incidents show that groups bypass barriers at significantly higher rates than solo hikers. Not because groups are dumber, because when 4 people look at each other and none of them flinches, the silence reads as consensus. Social proof overrides expert authority every time. Each woman looked to the others. No one blinked, so no one turned back. A solo hiker has only her own fear to argue with. In a group, each person quietly outsources the decision to the others, and everyone ends up trusting a courage that no single one of them actually feels. Second, sunk cost. They'd driven 6 hours. They had matching outfits. They had content planned. Turning around doesn't just mean turning around, it means admitting the trip was wrong. The emotional investment had already been made. The ranger was threatening something they'd already paid for, and the mind protects what it's already paid for, even when the price of keeping it is everything. Third, resentment of authority. The uniform didn't help him. For some people, it actively works against the message. A stranger in a hat telling you what you can't do triggers defiance, not compliance. The very authority that should have made the warning credible instead turned it into a challenge. And fourth, maybe the most lethal of all, the danger was invisible. There was no cliff edge, no rushing water, just air. Hot, still, silent air that looked exactly like a beautiful day. Every instinct humans evolved for spotting danger is tuned to motion, to predators, to heights, to the visible. Heat triggers none of it. The deadliest thing in that canyon is the one thing the body was never built to fear. He was fighting all 4 forces simultaneously. He was never going to win that argument. Which brings us back to his face, the one you saw at the beginning. Now you know exactly what he was thinking. That face. You've been carrying it since the first frame, the ranger, arm outstretched, watching them go. The resignation, the stillness, and now you know what it actually was. It wasn't defeat. It wasn't a man who'd failed at his job. It was the face of someone who had done everything correctly inside a system where doing everything correctly is sometimes not enough. The Grand Canyon receives roughly 6 million visitors every year. Rangers issue thousands of heat warnings annually. Thousands. The vast majority of people hear the speech, look at the sign, and turn around. They grumble, they're disappointed. Some of them argue for a minute. Then they go back to the rim, find some shade, and they're alive to tell the story. The ranger knows this. He's watched it happen hundreds of times. Every one of those turnarounds is a life that was never in danger because a warning that time landed. But he also knows the math on the other end. Of those who don't comply, some get lucky. The heat breaks early, a stranger shares water. They turn back just in time, and some don't get lucky at all. So he gives the warning anyway, every time, to every group. Because the one moment someone turns around, the one hiker who is 2 seconds from stepping past that barrier and then didn't, that moment is worth every dismissal, every eye roll, every phone pointed at his face. That's not resignation. That's a kind of quiet, grinding courage that doesn't look like courage from the outside. It's showing up to give a speech you know most people will respect, a few people will mock, and one person, eventually, will ignore all the way to the bottom. And then doing it again the next morning, because the alternative is to stop trying to catch the ones who can still be caught. These 4 women are a composite, a dramatization, not a single documented case. But everything around them is real. The closure policy is real. The upside-down mountain is real. The surface temperatures are real. The rangers who give that speech and carry what comes after are very real. The neon is invented, the canyon is not. If that framing matters to you, if you're someone who wants to understand not just what happened, but why, and what it costs the people left holding the line, subscribe to this channel. Not to support a number on a screen, but to be part of a community that thinks these stories are worth taking seriously. And before this closes, have you ever been the person who turned around when a ranger or a sign told you to? Or the person who almost didn't? Tell me in the comments, because that moment of hesitation is exactly where this whole story lives. The Grand Canyon will be there next season. The trails reopen. The light through those canyon walls is just as extraordinary in October as it is in July. Come back when the sign isn't red. The ranger will be there. He'll give you the all clear himself.